actually some impression similar to the girl over there. So in your opinion, is it better off if, say, Xinjiang get its own independence, or should the Communist Party change the way they dealing with the ethnic minority? Like, which one would be better off for the Xinjiang people, in your opinion?
I think reform within the PRC would be better. I think independence is always tricky for these territories. It's landlocked. It would have to move its stuff through somebody's territory for that resource economy to keep functioning. The pipelines would have to go through China or through Russia or through the stands, which are pretty unstable. I mean, most of the world's oil goes through the world, unstable, we just kind of have to cross our fingers and hope for the best. But I think economically it would be more difficult. And also, of course, most Han Chinese have moved there recently, but some were born there. And if you look at the case in Tibet, again, you've got second and third generation Chinese people there. And you might think, well, they shouldn't be there, but they are, and they have rights. And I always say, well, suppose you're going to do a referendum on should Xinjiang be independent. Who gets to vote? How long do you have to have been there? Do your parents have to come from there? And if you look at the case of Tibet, okay, we're going to vote on independence for Tibet. Who gets to vote? Do people in the Tibetan parts of Qinghai and Sichuan and Yunnan get to vote? Because that was all Tibet, historically, culturally. I think any kind of, assuming the Beijing government would allow it, which for a number of reasons I don't think it will, but even if they did, it would be so complicated and messy, and dealing with that in-migration and kind of trying to take it out again, you could end up with something like Indian partition. It could be that bad. I think it would be much, much better to have a lot of money put into economic affirmative action and educational and cultural programs and do it that way. That would be far more positive. And let some foreign NGOs in, let a bit of light into the whole thing too. Get some good publicity for it. The thing is that China actually, if you take the country as a whole, it has a brilliant record on poverty reduction. And then you look at a place like Xinjiang, you think, this is just wrong. This doesn't fit with the rest of it. And it needs sorting out.
Why do you think that the CCP has been so reluctant to allow foreign independent organizations to go in, even when you say that it might actually improve their publicity? Recently in the Xinjiang events, a few journalists have been beaten up, and has done nothing to help China's image overseas. Why do you think that? Is it because? Could you just say maybe it's because of the local government, they are reluctant to do it, or is it the central government as a whole is reluctant to allow foreign independent agencies to come in?
I think it goes through the whole hierarchy. I think that they always think that journalists will cause trouble. They don't really trust foreigners, I think, to understand the situation well enough. They think there will be distorted reporting because whether they don't have the languages or not, or whether they just don't have the background, they will just get things wrong. And actually, they pointed out a few instances, both in Tibet and in Xinjiang, where cropped photos were used or they were wrongly captured. You probably saw some of these incidents. And it gave a very distorted picture. In Tibet, they said, oh, these are Chinese armed police, they're throwing this old one in the police van. It was an ambulance. And they had Red Cross armbands on. This was not a linguistic misunderstanding, this was sheer carelessness. So sometimes foreign journalists don't help themselves. But I did think the Olympics would help, because I was in Beijing all for the run-up in July and August 08, and there were little demonstrations by foreigners. Every day there'll be a little lot of Christians on Tiananmen Square, or there'll be a bunch of people down in the alleyways off it protesting about Tibet or something or other. And the police would pounce on them. It was like whack-a-mole, they're popping up all over Beijing. But it went on, and the Olympics happened, and they were marvellous, and the sky didn't fall. And I thought, is anyone paying attention to this? Have they seen that actually you can get these little protests all the time? They don't really cause any trouble. And maybe, again, more freedom for journalists. Even during the Olympics, that was a bit hit and miss. They didn't fully keep to the rules they told the IOC they would do. But I think it would help. One of the reasons I keep recommending Radio Free Asia is that their reporters speak not only Chinese, but they speak Kazakh and Uyghur and Mongolian, and so they really get to talk to everybody. And they have much more balanced reporting, I think, than either Chinese or Westerners who are just parachuted in and don't really have a background. But I think the more journalists were allowed to operate in those areas and got to know them, the better it would be.
All right, well, thanks very much to Jackie Sheehan. I know it's very sensitive issue.